wrecked his career in front of friends, he quietly planned his revenge. Hello, Reddit community. How do you make things right after breaking the heart of the one who trusted you most? Because I am sitting here feeling like I've shattered something I can't ever fix. I don't know who to talk to about this, so I'm putting it here and hoping that maybe someone has been through something similar or has any advice to offer. I feel like my heart is torn, and the worst part is knowing I did this to myself. I wish I could take back the words I said, the thoughtless joke that felt like nothing in the moment but has left me in pieces now. I was careless, maybe even cruel, and I didn't realize just how much those words would cost me until it was far too late. Now I can't shake the regret that keeps clawing at me. My name is Lisa, and let's call my husband Tom. We've been married for 8 years now, long enough that you'd think I'd know better. You see, Tom is one of those people who doesn't just do his job. He lives it, and he's proud of it. He's kind, patient, and pours his heart into everything he does, especially for me. And I stay at home, keep our place in order, and have all the time in the world to think about how lucky I am. Or at least, I should have. Because instead of using the time that my husband's hard work allows me to do something useful and productive, I spend it gossiping and chatting. That was my sin, my tongue. And it had been going on for a long time, but it's not my fault. I was just saying what I see. To be honest, when we were dating, and even for the first 3 years of our marriage, Tom worked at a huge media company, but there was a big layoff that caused thousands of company staff to be let go. Sadly, Tom was among those that was let go. That year was a pretty hard one for us. He had to apply for almost 100 jobs, perhaps even more. We had to live off his savings for a long time. Thankfully, he had saved a lot. But then he got a job, not one he wanted, and not one I especially wanted. His friend put in a good word for him, and he got a job at the mine where he spent hours on end. And whenever he came back, he would be so dirty, it was so unbelievable. I know his work was hard, and I know he was just looking out for us, but I was really hoping that his work at the mine would be a temporary thing. But it's been years, and to make matters worse, he took on another job as a commercial truck driver to do during his off days. He was juggling all these very difficult jobs all at once, and while they could take care of us, they all had one thing in common. They were very embarrassing jobs. I used to sit down and ask myself what would happen when we have children and they are asked in school about their father's occupation. What would they say? A truck driver? A mine worker? The mere thought of it is just so embarrassing that it gives me shivers. Oh, I forgot to mention I was an absolutely horrible cook, and Tom was okay with it in the past. He didn't mind coming back and getting into the kitchen to prepare something for us, but after he started working in the mines, he said he didn't have that time, and he needed home-cooked meals whenever he came back. I felt betrayed because I clearly remembered how he told me it was okay that I didn't know how to cook. I even complained to my mother about it, and she told me to bear with him and help him out. Tom suggested that I take cooking classes when he was at work, which was my attempt to be a good wife. And of course, he was the one paying for this. And this was the seed that started our problems. The first day I went there, Tom was going to drop off a truck shipment, and he gave me a ride since we were heading the same way. I will never forget the feeling that rushed through me when he dropped me off and I got out of the vehicle. It was total embarrassment. Once I got out of the vehicle, I saw other women being dropped off by their husbands in nice cars, and their husbands were so cleanly dressed that it made me want to bury Tom in the shadows. That was my Tom in the past, fancy cars given by the company and fancy suits. But when he lost the job, the company took their car away. I was overthinking everything, but that was just the start. I started my cooking classes, but those classes were just for these women to come brag about who their husbands are and the things their husbands buy for them. It was suffocating, and I would lie if not for Tom's I am everywhere presence. It's so unbelievable. One day, when we were done with classes for the day and we were all heading out, I saw Tom standing outside. He was on his way back from the mine and decided to stop and give me a ride. He had bought a pickup truck and was so happy to pick me up. He was dirty, but he didn't mind. He grabbed me and lifted me in the air to show how happy he was. And I wanted to be happy for him, but what I felt was a rush of humiliation and complete shame. All the other wives couldn't stop looking at us, and I swear I felt like burying myself that instant. Thankfully, we got into the car and left, although I won't lie, the car is quite good. But it wasn't as fancy as the ones he used to drive or the ones the husbands of the women at the cooking class came to pick them with. When we got home that day, Tom went to take his bath, which was a rule I made for him since he started working at the mines. I was honestly bitter when I made that rule, but he didn't see it that way. He didn't care what he was going to do as long as it made me happy, and I was happy and comfortable. I cooked a delicious meal for him, and when we were done eating, he made advances at me for the first time in a while. Because of the jobs he does, he was always so tired when he came home, and because of that, we didn't have a lot of intimate moments. Not that I cared, though. I have never been a big fan of intimacy, so I didn't really care. Plus, there was the fact of me not being so attracted to Tom anymore because of how I now viewed him. But that night was great, although when I woke up in the morning, he was gone. I didn't have any cooking classes that day, but something really interesting happened. I got a call from one of the wives from my cooking class inviting me to her house. I was very surprised, but of course, I was happy to go. It beat staying at home alone with nothing to do, so I was definitely jumping at the opportunity. So I dressed up pretty, put on some makeup, and hurried over the address I was given. When I got there, I didn't want to believe that it was her house at first. This place was beautiful. It wasn't very large, but it was so pretty and well furnitured that it took my breath away. Some of the wives from the cooking class were already there. It was quite surprising to see them outside that large kitchen where we have our classes. To be honest, I knew that most of them in my class hung out together, especially because I used to hear them whisper about how a few of their husbands even worked at the same place. But it was just still weird seeing them there. We were just hanging out and talking. But I talked the least because I didn't want to look like I was the least privileged one out of all of them. They spent most of the time talking about the things their husbands got them, and when they were tired of talking, they shifted their attention to me. One of them asked me what my husband does, and I couldn't open my mouth to answer. I was so embarrassed and shocked at the same time. One of them, Vivian, was the one who pulled me out of that sticky situation. She told them that they were just getting to know me and they were already asking personal questions. Thankfully, I didn't need to say anything after that. After that hangout, I went home and prepared dinner. I couldn't stop thinking about everything that happened, about how embarrassed I was to say what my husband does for a living. So when he even came through the doors and greeted me, I didn't answer. I was angry and I didn't even know why. He came to me in the dining room where I was sitting to see if I was okay, because I always answer him when he says hi after coming home. In my head, I had gone through this rigorous argument with him where I asked him to quit his work or at least start looking for another white-collar job in the meantime. But looking at him standing there, I couldn't bring myself to say anything to him. He asked me if everything was fine, but I couldn't answer him. I just told him to go take his bath. He clearly knew I wouldn't let him hold me to comfort me if he's dirty, so he went to take his bath. And when he came back, I had served his food on the table. He held me and asked what the problem was, and I told him that it wasn't a problem he could handle. I pulled myself out of his grasp and left for the room. I went to bed early that day, and by the time I woke up in the morning, he was gone. But I saw a bouquet of flowers at my bedside. To be honest, it made me smile. He was still as thoughtful as ever. I still didn't have a cooking class that day, so I invited some friends over to catch up. I hadn't seen my friends in a while. By midday, all three of them were here. We liked to knit as we talked, so we knitted and talked about everything. I was quiet for most part of the conversations. I kept drifting off in thought, and when one of my friends asked what the problem was, I refused to say. She asked when I started hiding things from them. I didn't want to say anything, I swear, because my mother had always said that couples handle things as a couple and don't let other people get involved. But I was suffocating and my friends were here offering a way for me to breathe. I needed someone to talk to. Before I knew it, I was crying. They all hurried to my side and asked what the problem was. I told them that I felt like a bad person, but I couldn't hold it back any longer. They said I could let it all out. Before I knew it, my tongue started running. I was so frustrated that I just wanted to offload everything on my chest. I told them I hated the defeatist mentality that Tom had. He had just quit trying to look for a better job. I told them that it was so embarrassing to even say what my husband does in public, and I told them what happened at the house of the cooking class wife's house. I saw a look in their eyes and I knew they were holding something back. I asked what they were hiding. They said they had talked about it already, that they found it difficult to understand how I could withstand the embarrassment.
All right.
I felt like they could understand where I was coming from. I told them that the day he came to pick me up after buying the pickup truck was the most embarrassing day of my life. They told me that they could understand. One of them told me that if she had to learn how to cook, she might just cut off her hands. We all laughed, but I thought about it. Look at me learning to cook and spending so much time in the kitchen just to keep a man happy. I told them that I was getting frustrated with my life, that the current Tom wasn't the same person I married. I outrightly said that he was the kind of man that we'd see and make fun of, and now I have that man as my husband. My friends sympathized with me. They told me that I have to get my marriage back. I asked them how, and they told me to give him an ultimatum. They told me that if he really cared about him, he'd quit that stupid job that he was using to embarrass me and look for something serious and responsible. I nodded and said that they were right, that his job had taken a toll on me. I was cooking like my life depended on it, and that cleaning nonstop because of how much sand and dirt fell off his body when he came back from the mine. And he was clearly an embarrassment to me. I announced that he had to leave that stupid job or I would leave because I was drowning in this life. I mentioned how I don't even find him attractive anymore because of his job and the entire situation. I told my friends that I feel nothing but disgust when he tries to touch me because all I can imagine when he touches me is dirt. They laughed and I laughed as well. I nodded with a stupid smile on my face, and it was like the universe was just against me, because the next thing I heard was the loud sound of a car door banging shut, followed by the car engine starting and revving. I quickly hurried to the window and looked. It was Tom's pickup truck driving off at top speed. I felt my heart rate slow down. I asked myself why he came back to the house in the afternoon. That never happened. But more importantly, I was scared that he had heard everything. My friends told me not to be scared, that he needed to find out, and at least now he had. They told me that I was going to tell him eventually, so what difference does it make if he found out earlier and in the way he did? I told them that they were right and braced myself to properly have that conversation with him that night. That night, I prepared dinner and waited for him to return, but he didn't, and I slept on a couch in the living room while waiting for him. I wanted to address the issue at hand with as much immediacy as I could. He came back early in the morning, and I was lucky enough to wake up as he was coming in. I greeted him, but now he was the one who didn't answer. I quickly grabbed his arm, and he looked back and asked me if he wasn't too dirty for me to be touching him. That alone broke all doubt I had about him hearing me and my friends earlier. I told him that we need to talk, but he told me that he was tired and didn't need to say anything to me. That day, Tom didn't go to work. I was quite surprised, to be honest, because I knew for a fact that he wasn't off that day. But what was more surprising was plumbers and builders that came around later that day. Tom had called them to set up a tiny bathroom just at the back of the house. It was so surprising that it made me go to talk to him, but he wasn't giving me listening ears. For the next week, Tom would leave for work, and when he came home, he'd take his bath in the little bathroom outside before he came inside. And he slept on the couch in the living room. He didn't talk to me, nor did he eat anything I prepared. He didn't eat at home at all. After that first week, I locked every other entrance to the house one early morning before he could wake up. By the time he was ready for work and was ready to leave, I stood in front of the main door and told him to talk to me. He was so indifferent. I couldn't even believe that this person was the same Tom that had left flowers at my bedside just a week ago. He told me to get out of his way, but I refused. He asked what I wanted, and I told him that I just wanted us to talk. He told me that he had nothing to say to me. He said I want him to quit his job, but he has no intention of quitting. He said that I might not know this, but that same job I hate is the same one that has been taking care of us for years now. It's the same jobs that have clothed us, fed us, gotten us a car, and so much more. It's that same job that has allowed us to have savings and allowed me to remain a housewife. But I was too selfish to look past myself to see the good things. He said that we were lucky. that some of his colleagues who were laid off by the company he used to work for are currently homeless, and yet here I am being ungrateful. He said the reason he came back early that day was because he didn't like that I wasn't in a good mood. He thought that I felt neglected, and he was trying to be a good husband but met his wife saying the most horrid things about him. I apologized, and he told me that I didn't even know what I was sorry for. He forced his way past me, and that was the last conversation we had for about 2 weeks. By this time, things were beginning to get finished in the house: food, toiletries, cosmetics, and so on. Tom wasn't eating from the house anymore, so he didn't even care anymore. I tried to tell him that we were running out of things. His only answer to me was that his money was dirty since it was gotten from a dirty job, so I should go find clean money from somewhere else. I'm so annoyed right now. I feel like I don't have a husband anymore. And if he is punishing me, hasn't he gone too far already? I need help on what I should do. Please tell me what I should do. Update. Hi everyone. I'm back here because my life has taken a complete dive down the drain. I was thinking that Tom was just going through a phase and that this phase would soon pass. But that's not the case. He still refused to buy anything in the house, and I was honestly starving. I had some pocket money that he'd given me in the past, and I used it to eat for a few weeks, but I was living like a refugee. I tried borrowing money from my friends, but they didn't even have the money to give me. I begged them to ask their husbands for me, but they told me that they could not stress their husbands with such trivial matters. It was so painful, the way they turned their backs on me like it was nothing. They clearly never had my best interest at heart, because what kind of friends do absolutely nothing to help you when you are starving? I even asked them to bring some food over for me, but they had some excuse that was so stupid for me to even remember. I begged Tom again and again, but he didn't care about anything I had to say. I ran into one of the wives from my cooking class, the one who told the others not to bother me with questions I don't want to answer, and I met her in the most humiliating way. I tried paying for the things I got at the mall, but my card was declined. I didn't have enough money in the account. I felt stranded, and she was in line, so she paid for me. A stranger paid for my food, and my friends couldn't. She gave me a ride, and I guess she noticed that I felt embarrassed, so she told me that it was completely okay that my card was declined. She said that she knew that my husband worked in the mines because she sees him early every morning with a group of mine workers heading for the mine. She told me that she didn't want to impede my personal life, but she knew that the mine workers are paid well, so she wanted to know if me and my husband were in debt or something. I asked her why she would think we're in debt, and she said that she knew for a fact that my husband would give me everything I needed. She said it was clear to her and everyone at the cooking class that my husband loved me so much, because most men call their friends when they get a new car. But he couldn't even wait for me to come home. He brought it straight to my class. At this point, I burst out in tears, crying inside her car. She was honestly shocked. She pulled over and asked what was wrong. I couldn't control myself. I kept sobbing and crying. I needed someone to rely on, so I told her everything. She patted my back and consoled me. Her advice to me was that I should take some time away from the house, give my husband some space, and hope that he forgives me. It's been too much now, and I haven't heard a single thing from him. Not a call, not even as little as a text. It is as though he has forgotten me, and I keep having the urge to reach out to him. By the way, I moved back to my parents' house. My mother pities me, but my father has given me an earful about how he always knew that my mother spoiled me too much. Looking back now, I know I made a lot of stupid decisions. My actions were senseless, and my reasoning still doesn't make any sense. I lost a great man because of my childishness. I let my friends who do not even have a hold of their own lives dictate what happens in my marriage. It's clear that Tom wants nothing to do with me anymore. I won't be shocked if I wake up to a divorce document tomorrow. Anyhow, I think he's punishing me with the uncertainty, me not knowing what comes next. If this is his revenge, it is killing me. My dad says I talk too much and I rely too much on people with my problems, so I'm trying to stop doing that. In line with that, this will be the last time you guys will hear from me. Goodbye, Reddit. Thanks for all the advice and comments, both good and bad. I wish I could say I knew better. I should have after all these years. But now, all I feel is regret.